Okay, in the last video, if you haven't seen it yet, please watch it. We talked about the process of how to complete a square. We're now going to see how to use that to solve an equation. So consider the equation x squared plus 6x plus 5. When we were completing the square, we were dealing only with the x squared terms and the x terms. So our first step in solving this equation is to get those two pieces by themselves. So we take that 5 and we bring it over to the other side. Now we're going to focus on x squared plus 6x. We say we want to complete the square. Now you might be wondering, well, why do you want to complete the square? What is it about completing the square that you want to do? Well, we'll see in a moment how that's going to help us. So remember, to complete the square, our formula for completing the square is x squared plus 2bx plus b squared. So we need to figure out what number needs to be with the x squared plus 6x so that it would be a perfect square. And so in other words, we're looking at the 6x there and we say, well, I need 2b to be equal to 6. So we can write that down, we can solve that equation, find out that the b from our formula above there for this problem has to be 3. Once we know that the number term should be 3 squared, so we square it and get 9. And so now we need to add a 9 onto it. Okay. But before we were just trying to figure out what did we need to have there to complete the square. Well, now we're actually dealing with an equation. So we added 9 onto the equation on one side, so we have to do it to the other. Okay. And because it's an equation, we can do that. Okay. Rewriting things now, we would have this, x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 4. Now because x squared plus 6x plus 9 is a square, perfect square, we can factor it. Okay, and this is where our having completed the square now becomes helpful, because we have something squared equal to a number. In a previous video on using the square root property to solve equations, we solved a problem like this. The idea is that now that we have something squared equal to a number, we can take the square root of both sides. Now remember, when you take the square root of something squared, it's really absolute value. Square root of 4, that's just 2. And then what we usually did at that point, what we did in the past, we'll still do the same thing. We can drop the absolute value and make that plus or minus 2. Now at this point, we're almost there. We almost got x by itself. So there is one more step, and that is to get x by itself, so we subtract a 3. Now, if this problem had been like, instead of a 2 had been a square root of 2, then that would have been fine, leaving your answer as negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 2. And when you type your answers into your homework online, you'd have written in negative 3 plus square root of 2, comma, negative 3 minus square root of 2. But here we actually can work out negative 3 plus 2 and negative 3 minus 2, so we do that. And so we find that this equation has two answers, negative 1 and negative 5. Now the equation we started with actually could have been solved by factoring, but we went through it this time with completing the square just to see how this method works, because we can use this completing the square method to solve any second degree equation. We can solve any second degree equation by using this completing the square method. Sorry, a yawn there. Okay, so in the next video we'll look at a few more examples of this. Until then.